The ship came out of faster-than-light travel with a soft hum. Commander Cale Rennick stood at the window of his small vessel and looked at the sight before him. The Volanthi Citadel floated in the darkness of space like a jewel made of light and gold. It was the size of a small moon. Its towers reached up like fingers trying to touch the stars. Ships from 100 different worlds moved around it like fireflies. Cale had seen many things in his 52 years of life. He had seen planets burn. He had seen stars die. But he had never seen anything built with such beauty and such pride. The Volanthi had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had time to make things beautiful. Humanity had been in space for only 60 years. His ship was cleared to land in one of the lower docking bays. Not the grand entrance where the important delegates arrived. The lower bays were for traders, servants, and species that did not matter much. Cale did not complain. He had learned long ago that pride was a luxury. Survival was what mattered. He walked through the long corridors of the Citadel alone. He had no guards. He had no servants. He had no advisors whispering in his ear. Earth could not afford to send more than one person. The journey cost too much. The bribes to get an invitation cost even more. So they sent him. One man to represent all of humanity at the 500th anniversary summit of the Galactic Concordat. The Concordat was the closest thing the galaxy had to a government. It was not really a government. It was more like a club for the powerful. The elder races met and talked and made deals. They divided up resources and territories. They decided who would live and who would die. Humanity was not a member. Humanity was barely a guest. Cale walked with steady steps. His boots made heavy sounds on the polished floor. Other beings moved around him. Some were tall and thin like walking trees. Some were short and round with too many eyes. Some floated on fields of energy or crawled on many legs. All of them wore beautiful things. Robes that seemed to be made of liquid light. Armor that shone like captured stars. Jewelry that probably cost more than entire cities on Earth. Cale wore his armor. It was not beautiful. It was not shining. It was black steel that had been repaired many times. Dents covered the chest plate. Burn marks scarred the shoulders. The joints were stiff from years of use. Welt lines showed where pieces had been fixed or replaced. It looked like something pulled from a battlefield and never cleaned, because that is exactly what it was. People stared at him as he walked. Some pointed. Some laughed behind their hands. Some looked at him with confusion, as if they could not understand why anyone would wear such a thing to such a place. Cale ignored them all. He had a job to do. He would do it. The main hall of the Citadel was the largest room Cale had ever seen. The ceiling was so high it disappeared into soft clouds of light. The floor was made of crystal that showed stars moving beneath it. Thousands of beings filled the space, talking and laughing and showing off their wealth. Music played from somewhere, soft and strange and beautiful. Cale found a spot near one of the walls and stood there. He did not try to talk to anyone. He did not try to make friends. He watched and listened. That was what he was here to do. Watch, listen, learn what he could about the powers that controlled the galaxy. Bring that information back to Earth. A group of beings walked past him. They wore armor made of something that looked like frozen lightning. One of them stopped and looked at Cale. His face was long and narrow with silver skin. "What are you?" he asked. His voice was like wind through metal pipes. "Human," Cale said. The silver being looked at his armor. He made a sound that might have been a laugh. "I thought humans were poor. I did not know they were also blind to their own shame." He walked away with his friends. They were all laughing. Cale did not move. His face did not change. He had heard worse. He had survived worse. More time passed. More beings came and went. Some stopped to stare at him. Some took images of him with their devices, probably to share with others and laugh about later. The strange human in his ugly armor. The primitive creature who did not know how to dress properly. Cale thought about Earth. He thought about the small blue planet spinning in its corner of the galaxy. 8 billion people lived there. They were trying so hard to catch up, trying so hard to matter. They built ships as fast as they could. They learned everything they could steal or buy or discover. They sent people like him to places like this to try to find a way forward, and the galaxy laughed at them. Servant came by with drinks on a floating tray. She was a small being with soft fur and large eyes. She looked at Cale with something like pity. "Would you like something, sir?" she asked. "Water," Cale said. "Thank you." She gave him a glass. The water was clear and cold and perfect. Cale drank it slowly. He was in no hurry. The summit would last for 3 days. He had time. Across the hall, a great staircase made of crystal began to glow. Music changed. Voices grew quiet. Everyone turned to look. Something important was about to happen. Cale set down his empty glass and waited. Dot figures began to appear at the top of the staircase. They were tall and beautiful in a terrible way. Their bodies were covered in hard shells that glowed with patterns of light. Their eyes were large and made of many small parts. They moved like dancers, each step perfect and proud. The Volanti, the hosts of this summit, the rulers of 17 star systems, one of the oldest and most powerful races in the known galaxy. And at the front of them walked the High Matriarch herself, Selveth Kairani. Cale had seen images of her before. They did not do her justice. She was power made into a living shape. Her battle mantle flowed behind her like a river of dark water. The scales of a void serpent, people said. Worth enough to buy a fleet of warships. She walked down the staircase slowly. Her eyes moved across the crowd. She smiled at some. She nodded at others. She was a queen greeting her subjects. And then her eyes found Cale. She stopped. Her smile changed into something else. Something curious. Something hungry. She changed her path. Instead of going to the center of the hall where the most important guests waited, she walked toward the wall. Toward him. The crowd parted before her. Silence spread like ripples in water. Cale did not move. He stood straight. He kept his hands at his sides. He watched her come. The High Matriarch of the Volanti stopped 3 steps in front of him. Her guards spread out behind her. Her glowing eyes studied him from head to toe. The patterns on her shell flickered with colors he did not have names for. "Wow," she said. Her voice was sharp and clear. It carried through the silent hall. "What do we have here?" Cale looked at her. He said nothing. He waited. And in that moment, standing in the most beautiful room in the galaxy, wearing armor that looked like it belonged in a trash heap, Commander Cale Rennick knew that his real test was about to begin. The High Matriarch Selveth walked around Cale slowly. Her steps made no sound on the crystal floor. Her eyes never left him. The patterns on her shell changed colors as she moved, shifting from deep blue to bright gold to angry red. The entire hall was watching now. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds had stopped their conversations. They had stopped their drinking and their laughing and their dealing. Every eye was on the strange human in the ugly armor and the beautiful queen who circled him like a predator. "I asked you a question," Selveth said. Her voice was soft, but it carried through the silence like a blade. "What are you?" Cale met her eyes. Commander Cale Rennick, representative of Earth and the Human Federation. Selveth made a sound. It was something between a laugh and a click of her mandibles. "A commander. How impressive. And Earth sent a commander to my summit." She looked at her guards. I suppose we should be honored that they sent someone with a title. The guards made sounds of amusement. So did some beings in the crowd. Selveth continued her slow walk around Kale. She studied every part of his armor. Every dent. Every scratch. Every burn mark. Her glowing eyes missed nothing. "Tell me, Commander," she said, "did your planet not receive the invitation properly? Perhaps there was a mistake in the translation. Perhaps your people did not understand the requirements." "We received the invitation," Kale said. His voice was calm. "We understood it. Did you?" Selveth stopped in front of him again. She leaned closer. She was taller than him by almost a head, because the invitation clearly stated that representatives should wear their finest attire, their most treasured ceremonial pieces, things that show the glory and history of their species. She reached out with one long finger and tapped his chest plate. The sound was dull and flat. "And you wore this." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Not just a few beings now. Many of them. The sound filled the great hall like poison filling a cup. Selveth smiled. Her mouth was wide and filled with small, sharp teeth. "Perhaps this is your finest. Is that it? Perhaps your species simply has nothing better." She tilted her head. "I have heard that humans are poor. I have heard that your world is small and weak and far from important. But I did not think you were also without pride." Kale said nothing. He stood still. His face showed nothing. "This armor," Selveth continued, raising her voice so everyone could hear, "looks like it was pulled from a garbage pit. Look at it. Dents everywhere. Burn marks. Cheap repairs. A child could make something better." She looked at the crowd. "This is what humanity sends to represent them. This is what they think is good enough for my hall." More laughter. Louder this time. Some beings were pointing at Kale now. Some were taking images with their devices. The strange human in his broken armor. Something to laugh about later. Something to share with friends back home. A tall being with feathers made of metal stepped forward. He was a Deshan, Kale knew. A warrior race. They respected strength and power above all things. "Matriarch," the Deshan said, "perhaps we should not waste our time on this creature. Clearly his species has nothing to offer. Let him stand in his corner and watch while the real powers do their work." No, Selveth said. She was enjoying this. Her patterns glowed brighter with pleasure. "I want to understand. I want to learn." She looked at Kale again. "Tell me, Commander, is there a reason you came here looking like a beggar? Is this some kind of human custom? Do your people enjoy being laughed at?" Kale took a slow breath. "I was told to wear my finest." "I did." Selveth's eyes widened. Then she laughed. It was a sharp sound, like glass breaking. "Your finest." "This is your finest." She turned to the crowd. "Did you hear that? This pile of scrap metal is the best humanity has to offer." The hall erupted in laughter. Not just amusement now. True mockery. The kind of laughter that was meant to wound. The kind that said you are nothing. You are less than nothing. You do not belong here, and you never will. Selveth spread her arms wide. Her battle mantle flowed around her like dark water. "Look at my mantle," she said. "This is made from the scales of a void serpent. My ancestors hunted it in the spaces between stars. It took them 300 years. This single piece of clothing is worth more than your entire planet's military fleet." She touched the jewelry on her neck. These gems were formed in the heart of a dying star. Each one contains the power of a small sun. They have been in my family for 6,000 years. She stepped closer to Kale, so close he could see his own reflection in her glowing eyes. "I have worn ceremonial pieces that are older than your entire species. Time among the stars," she said quietly. My grandmother's grandmother wore armor that was ancient when your people were still living in caves. And you come to my hall, to my summit, dressed in something that looks like it was rescued from a war zone and never cleaned." She pulled back. Her voice rose again. "You have no history. You have no legacy. You have no glory. You are children who found their way to the adult table, and you do not even know enough to be ashamed of yourselves." The crowd was not laughing anymore. They were watching in silence. The matriarch's words had turned from mockery to something harder, something that felt like a judgment, like a sentence. "Go back to your corner, Commander," Selveth said. She turned away from him. "Stand there and watch. Learn from your betters. And perhaps someday, in 1,000 years, your species will have earned the right to wear something that does not make us all want to look away in disgust." She began to walk back toward the center of the hall. Her guards followed. The crowd began to part before her again, ready to go back to their conversations and their deals. Cale stood alone by the wall. The laughter had stopped, but the silence was worse. Every being in the hall was looking at him with the same expression: pity, contempt, the certainty that he was exactly what the matriarch had said: nothing, no one. A representative of a species that did not matter. But then something happened. An old being stepped forward from the crowd. He was bent and slow. His skin was gray and wrinkled like ancient leather. He had 4 eyes, all of them pale and watery with age. He walked with a staff made of something that looked like bone. He was a Korvathi. Cale recognized the species from his briefings. They were scholars, historians. They kept records of everything that happened in the galaxy. They were respected for their knowledge, even if they had no military power. The old Korvathi walked past the matriarch without even looking at her. He walked straight toward Cale. His 4 eyes were fixed on the human's armor with an intensity that seemed strange in such an ancient face. Selveth stopped. She turned back, curious. The Korvathi stopped in front of Cale. He was breathing hard from the short walk, but his eyes were sharp. "Human," he said. His voice was thin and dry like old paper. "May I look more closely at your armor?" Cale nodded. "Yes." The old being leaned in. He studied the chest plate. He studied the shoulders. He reached out with one trembling hand and touched a burn mark near Cale's left arm. "Plasma burns," the Korvathi said. He was not speaking to Cale. He was speaking to himself, but his voice carried in the silent hall. "Close range. Very close. The kind that would kill most species." He touched a series of dents on the chest plate. "Kinetic impacts. High caliber. Military grade." He ran his fingers over a weld line on the side. "Field repair. Done quickly. Done under pressure." He stepped back. His 4 eyes were wide now. There was something new in them. Something that had not been there before. "This is not ceremonial armor," the Korvathi said. He looked at Selveth. Then he looked at the crowd. Then he looked back at Cale. "This armor has seen war. Real war. This armor has been worn in battle." The hall was very quiet. The Korvathi looked at Cale with his ancient eyes. "Commander Rennick," he said slowly, "this is your armor, isn't it? Not something borrowed. Not something ceremonial. This is the armor you have worn in combat. The armor that has kept you alive." Cale met the old being's eyes. "Yes," he said, and everything changed. The old Korvathi's words hung in the air like smoke. The hall remained silent. Every being was staring at Cale now with different eyes. Not pity anymore. Not contempt. Something else was growing in their looks. Something like curiosity. Something like doubt. Selveth had stopped walking. She stood frozen in the middle of the hall, her back still turned to Cale. The patterns on her shell flickered rapidly, shifting through colors that Kale did not understand. Slowly, she turned around. "What did you say?" she asked the Korvathi. The old scholar did not look at her. He was still studying Kale's armor with those pale, watery eyes. His 4 pupils moved independently, each one examining a different part of the scarred black steel. "I said this armor has seen war," the Korvathi repeated. "I am a historian, matriarch. I have studied weapons and armor for 300 years. I know the difference between ceremony and combat. This armor was not made to look impressive. It was made to keep its wearer alive. And it has done its job many times." He reached out and touched the left shoulder plate. His old fingers traced a pattern of burns and melted metal. "These marks," he said, "they are from plasma weapons. Not the kind used in training or sport. Military grade. The kind designed to burn through starship hulls." He looked at Kale. "You were hit at close range." "Very close. Less than 10 meters, I would guess." Kale nodded slowly. 8 meters. The Korvathi made a sound that might have been surprise. 8 meters. "And you survived. I was lucky." "Luck." The old being shook his head. "I do not think luck leaves marks like these." He moved his attention to the chest plate. "These impacts. I count 7 of them. 7 direct hits from kinetic rounds. High velocity. The kind fired from heavy repeating weapons." He looked at Selvith. "Matriarch, a single hit from such a weapon would kill a Volanti warrior, even in full battle dress. This human was hit 7 times. And he is standing here." The hall was beginning to murmur now. Beings were whispering to each other. Some were moving closer, trying to see the armor better. Selvith's patterns had stopped shifting. They were settled on a deep purple color that Kale did not recognize. Her voice was different when she spoke again, quieter, less certain. "Perhaps the armor is old," she said. "Perhaps it belonged to someone else. Perhaps this human is simply wearing a dead soldier's equipment." The Korvathi shook his head. "The repairs tell a different story. Look here." He pointed to the weld lines on the side of the chest plate. "This repair was done quickly. In the field. No proper equipment. Someone welded this together with whatever they had available." He pointed to another repair near the hip. "This one is different. Better tools. More time. But still done by the same hands. The same technique." He looked at Kale with new respect. "You repaired this armor yourself," he said. "Multiple times. Over many years. This is not a dead soldier's equipment. This armor has grown with you. Changed with you. It carries your history." Kale said nothing. He did not need to. The old scholar was telling his story for him. A Veshan warrior pushed through the crowd. He was the same one who had spoken earlier, the one with feathers made of metal. His eyes were sharp, and his voice was harder now. "I do not care about old burns and dents," he said. "Any fool can be hit by weapons. Standing still and being shot does not make you a warrior. What battles has this human actually fought? What enemies has he defeated?" The Korvathi raised one hand. "I was coming to that." He reached into his robes and pulled out a small device. It glowed with soft light. "I have access to the Galactic military archives. Every major battle in the last 1,000 years is recorded there. Let me search." His fingers moved over the device. The light flickered and changed. "Kale Rennick," he said slowly. "Commander. Human Federation Navy." He was quiet for a moment, reading. Then his 4 eyes widened. "Siege of Europa," he said. "You were there?" Kale nodded. Whispers spread through the crowd. Even the Veshan warrior looked uncertain now. "What is the Siege of Europa?" someone asked. The Korvathi spoke without looking up from his device. "It was a battle 33 years ago. A hostile species called the Draven attacked a human colony on one of their moons. The humans were outnumbered 20-1. They had no reinforcements coming. No help from anyone. He paused. They held for 47 days. The hall was completely silent now. 47 days, the Korvathi repeated. I have records of sieges that lasted longer, of course, but I have never seen numbers like these. The Draven lost 18,000 soldiers taking that moon. The humans had only 2,000 defenders when the siege began. He looked at Kale. Only 300 were alive at the end. Kale's face did not change. 286. You remember the exact number. I remember all of them. The Korvathi scrolled through more information. Liberation of Kepler 442b. You were there as well. Yes. 18 days of tunnel fighting. Close quarters. No room for vehicles or heavy weapons. Hand to hand in the darkness. The old being's voice was soft. Your force went in with 200 soldiers. 31 came out. 31 walked out. Kale corrected quietly. We carried 12 more. Selva took a step forward. Her voice was strange now, almost careful. These battles, they were against minor species. Local conflicts. Nothing that concerned the Concordat. The Korvathi looked at her with his pale eyes. Perhaps matriarch. But there is one more battle in this record. One that did concern the Concordat very much. He touched his device again. The Battle of the Crimson Rift. The murmurs stopped. Complete silence fell over the hall like a blanket. Kale saw beings exchange looks. He saw fear in some of their faces. He saw old memories coming back to the surface. The Korvathi spoke into the silence. 12 years ago, the Vreth Dominion decided to expand their territory. They pushed into the neutral zone near human space. The Concordat debated what to do. His voice became harder. The debate lasted for 8 months. The elder races argued about treaties and territories and whether the Vreth were technically violating any laws. He looked at Selveth. The Volanthi argued that intervention was not worth the cost. The Theshans said it was not their concern. The Morthani calculated that the Vreth would stop before reaching important systems. He pointed at Kale. The humans did not debate. The humans did not calculate. The Vreth fleet arrived at their border, and the humans fought. The Theshan warrior stepped forward. His voice was rough. I remember the Crimson Rift. My people thought the humans were fools. A young species with a small fleet challenging the Vreth? We expected them to be destroyed in weeks. They held for 6 months, the Korvathi said quietly. 6 months, alone, no allies, no support. The Concordat watched from a safe distance while humanity bled. Kale spoke for the first time in minutes. His voice was calm and level. We were not members of the Concordat. We were not protected by your treaties. The Vreth saw us as easy prey. Primitives with primitive ships and primitive weapons. He looked at Selveth. They learned differently. The Korvathi nodded. The Vreth lost 40% of their invasion fleet at the Crimson Rift. They retreated. They have not expanded in that direction since. He put away his device. Commander Rennick served at the Crimson Rift for the entire 6 months. According to these records, he was wounded 4 times. He was declared dead twice. He returned to combat both times. The old scholar looked at the crowd. His ship was destroyed in the 3rd month. He transferred to a ground defense post and kept fighting. The hall was utterly still. The Korvathi turned back to Kale. Commander, he said, I believe I understand now why you wore this armor to the summit. But I think others do not. Would you explain it to them? Kale looked at the old scholar. He looked at the crowd of powerful beings who had laughed at him. He looked at Selveth, who stood frozen with her patterns shifting through colors he could not name. Yes, he said. I will. He reached up and began to unclasp his helmet. Cale's fingers found the clasps on his helmet. They were old and worn, like everything else he wore. He had opened them thousands of times before. In ships, in trenches, in the cold silence of space. His hands knew the motion without thinking. The helmet came free with a soft click. He lowered it slowly. The hull drew in its breath. Cale's face was a map of survival. A deep scar ran from his forehead to his left cheek, cutting through where his eye should have been. In its place sat something mechanical. A prosthetic eye that glowed with soft blue light. Smaller scars covered his skin like cracks in old stone. His hair was gray and cut short. His remaining eye was dark brown and very tired. He was not an old man. 52 years was young by human standards. But he looked older. He looked like someone who had seen too much and remembered all of it. Selvith stared at him. The colors on her shell had settled into something pale and uncertain. "I was told to wear my finest to this summit," Cale said. His voice was not loud, but in the silence of the hole, it carried to every corner. "So I did." He held up his helmet. It was dented and scratched like the rest of his armor. "I have owned many things in my life. Most of them are gone now, lost or broken or left behind. But this armor has stayed with me. It is the only thing I have that matters." He set the helmet down on a nearby table. The sound was flat and heavy. Real. Not like the delicate things that filled this hall. "You asked about my eye," he said, though no one had spoken. "I lost it at the siege of Europa. I was 19 years old. A Draven soldier came through the wall of our bunker. There were 3 of us inside. He killed the other 2 before I could reach my weapon." Cale touched the scar on his face. "We fought hand to hand for almost a minute. He was bigger than me, stronger, better trained. He took my eye with a blade. I took his throat with my hands." He paused. "That was the first time I killed someone up close. Not with a gun, not from a ship, with my own fingers." The hall was very quiet. No one moved. No one whispered. Cale touched the burn marks on his shoulder. "These burns are from Kepler 442b. The tunnels were narrow. Sometimes only one person could fit through at a time. We had to go in single file. The enemy would wait around corners with plasma cutters. Not guns, just tools. They would wait until we came around the corner and then fire at point-blank range." His fingers traced the melted metal. "A man named Torres was walking in front of me. He took the first blast. It killed him instantly. The second blast hit me here." He tapped his shoulder. I fell back. The man behind me, Rodriguez, he pulled me to safety. He wrapped my arm in his own shirt to stop the bleeding. Then he picked up my weapon and went around that corner to kill the enemy who had shot me." Cale's voice did not shake. It was flat and calm, like he was reading from a report. "Rodriguez died 2 days later. Different tunnel. Different enemy. I carried his body for 6 kilometers to reach the extraction point. I promised I would bring him home. I kept that promise." He turned slowly, letting everyone see his armor. "Every mark on this armor is a story. Every dent is a moment when I should have died but did not. Every weld is a repair I made with my own hands. Sometimes while bleeding, sometimes while watching friends die around me." He pointed to a cluster of impacts on his chest plate. "The Battle of the Crimson Rift. We called it the Crimson Rift because of the color of the nebula we fought in. Red gas and red dust and red light. After a while, we could not tell the difference between the nebula and the blood." His finger touched each impact point. 7 hits from a breath-heavy cannon. We were defending a station in the outer ring of the system. Supply depot. Not important to your Concordat. Very important to us. Without those supplies, the rest of our fleet would starve. He closed his eyes for a moment. The Vreth sent a boarding party. 200 soldiers. We have 43 defenders. I was the ranking officer. He opened his eyes. I am not good at speeches. I do not know how to inspire people with words. I only know how to stand in front of them and fight. So that is what I did. He turned to face Selveth directly. I stood at the main entrance of that station for 11 hours. The Vreth had to come through a narrow corridor to reach us. I made them pay for every step. Every time they pushed forward, I pushed back. Every time they shot me, I got up again. He touched the impacts on his chest. First hit knocked me down. Second hit broke 3 ribs. Third hit cracked my helmet. Fourth and fifth came together. I do not remember those. They told me later that I kept fighting for another hour before I noticed I was bleeding inside my armor. The Leshen warrior stepped forward. His voice was rough. No one takes 7 hits from a Vreth heavy cannon and survives. The weapons are designed to punch through ship armor. This armor is not ship armor, Kale said simply. It is worse. It is thin and old and repaired too many times. But I was still standing. So I kept fighting. He pointed to the weld line on his side. This happened later in the battle. A Vreth officer broke through our line. He had a blade that could cut through steel like water. He found me while I was reloading my weapon. He put that blade through my side. It went through the armor, through my body, and out the other side. Kale spoke like he was describing the weather. I should have died. The blade cut my liver in half. I was bleeding faster than my body could handle. But the battle was not over. There were still enemies in front of me. So I grabbed the Vreth officer with both hands and I pulled him closer. I pulled him until his blade went all the way through me and came out his own chest. He touched the rough weld. One of my soldiers. A young woman named Chun. She pulled me behind cover and used a welding torch to seal the wound. No medicine. No anesthesia. Just fire and pressure, and hoping I would not die before she finished. The Kovati scholar spoke. You survived. I was back fighting in 4 hours, Kale said. There was no one else. Our medic was dead. Half our defenders were dead. The Vreth were still coming. I could not lie down and rest. Not while my people needed me. He looked around the hall. At all the beautiful beings in their beautiful clothes. At all the ancient powers with their ancient glory. You asked why I wore this armor to your summit. The invitation said to wear my finest. To show my glory and history. He spread his arms wide. This is my glory. This is my history. 60 years of humanity fighting to survive in a galaxy that does not want us. He pointed at his ruined armor. Every scar on this steel is a friend I lost. Every repair is a promise I kept. Every dent is a battle we should have lost, but won because we refused to lie down and die. His voice grew stronger. My species does not wrap ourselves in wealth to prove our worth. We do not wear the pretty things of our ancestors to show how important we are. We wear our own scars. We carry our own weight. We earn our place with blood and pain and the stubborn refusal to give up. He looked at Selveth. His single human eye met her glowing compound eyes. You said this armor looks like garbage. You said I should be ashamed. You said humanity has no history, no legacy, no glory. He picked up his helmet from the table. This armor has been through more real combat than most of your ceremonial pieces have ever seen. This armor has kept me alive through things that would kill your bravest warriors. This armor is soaked in the blood of my enemies and the tears of my friends. He held the helmet against his chest. It is not beautiful. It is not expensive. It is not ancient or precious or made from the scales of void serpents. But it is mine. I earned it. I bled for it. I watched people die so that I could keep wearing it. His voice dropped lower. That is worth more to me than all the riches in your hall." The silence that followed was complete. No one spoke. No one moved. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. Kale stood alone in the center of the galaxy's most powerful beings, wearing armor that cost less than a single jewel in that room. But for the first time since he arrived, no one was laughing. No one was laughing at all. The silence in the hall stretched on. It was not the awkward silence of embarrassment or the heavy silence of anger. It was something else. Something that felt almost sacred. Like the quiet that falls after a storm has passed and the world is trying to understand what just happened. Kale stood still with his helmet pressed against his chest. He had said what he came to say. He had not planned any of this. He had not expected to speak at all. He had simply wanted to stand in his corner, watch, and learn. But the matriarch had forced his hand. And now the truth was out. The old Kovate scholar was the first to move. He stepped forward, slowly, his ancient legs shaking with the effort. His 4 pale eyes were wet with something that might have been tears. His staff clicked against the crystal floor as he walked. He stopped in front of Kale. "Among my people," he said, "we have studied war for thousands of years. We have recorded every battle, every siege, every campaign in galactic history. We know the names of great warriors from 100 species. We know the stories of heroes and monsters and everything in between." His voice was thin but steady. "We have a word for one who wears the armor that has saved their life through impossible odds. One who has stood against death so many times that death itself seems to have given up on taking them." He paused. "We call him Kelvorus. In your language, it means something like those whom death has refused." The old being slowly bent his body forward. It was painful for him. His joints cracked. His breath came hard. But he kept going until his head was lower than Kale's chest. He was bowing. "We do not mock Kelvorus," the Kovathi said. "We bow to them, because they have earned something that cannot be bought or inherited. They have earned the right to stand anywhere they wish, wearing anything they wish, and no one has the right to question them." He stayed in that position, bent and trembling. The hall was frozen. Then another being stepped forward. A Theshan warrior. The same one who had spoken earlier with contempt in his voice. His metal feathers clicked as he moved. His eyes were hard, and his face was unreadable. He stopped beside the Kovathi. He looked at Kale for a long moment. "I have fought in 12 wars," the Theshan said. "I have led armies. I have conquered worlds. I thought I understood what strength meant. But I have never stood alone against a force 20 times my size. I have never held a position for 6 months without relief. I have never kept fighting after being shot 7 times. He placed his fist against his chest. It was the Theshan salute, the highest honor a warrior could give to another. "The Theshan Dominion recognizes you, Commander Rennick. You are a warrior. Whatever your species, whatever your armor, you have earned the respect of my people." He bowed his head and stepped back. Another being came forward. Then another. Then more. The Morthani delegation. Cold and calculating beings who valued survival above all things. They had done the math, Kale knew. They had looked at the numbers and understood what it meant to survive when you should have died. They bent their long necks in silent acknowledgement. The crystalline beings of the Veth Collective. The tentacled scholars of Outer Ring. The warrior priests of the Burning Path. One by one, they came forward. Some bowed. Some saluted in their own ways. Some simply nodded with new respect in their eyes. Even the representatives of the Vreth Dominion came. They were tall and dark, with shells like polished obsidian and eyes that burned with inner fire. They had been humanity's enemies at the Crimson Rift. Their soldiers had tried to kill Kale a dozen times. The leader of their delegation stopped in front of him. His voice was deep and grinding, like stones being crushed together. "The Dominion does not apologize," he said. "We do not regret the wars we have fought, but we recognize strength when we see it. We tried to break humanity at the rift. We failed." He inclined his head just slightly. "You have earned your survival, human. We will not forget." He stepped back. The hall had transformed. What had begun as mockery had become something else entirely. Beings who had laughed were now quiet. Beings who had pointed and whispered were now standing with their heads lowered. The great powers of the galaxy, ancient and proud and certain of their own importance, were paying respect to a man in broken armor. Only one being had not moved. Selvath Kairani, High Matriarch of the Volanthi, stood in the center of it all like a statue. Her patterns had stopped shifting. They were fixed on a pale blue color that Kale finally recognized. It was shame. The hall watched her, waiting. She was the one who had started this. She was the one who had called his armor garbage. She was the one who had said humanity had no glory, no history, no right to stand in her hall. Slowly, very slowly, she walked toward him. Her guards did not follow. She came alone. Her battle mantle of void serpent scales trailed behind her, worth enough to buy fleets. But somehow it did not seem so impressive anymore. Not compared to scarred black steel that had been welded together, with desperate hands in the middle of a battle. She stopped in front of Kale. They were close enough to touch. For a long moment, she said nothing. Her glowing eyes studied his face. The scars, the mechanical eye, the tired lines around his mouth. She looked at his armor, really looked at it, seeing not garbage, but history. Not shame, but sacrifice. "I have ruled 17 star systems for 300 years, she said quietly. Her voice did not carry now. It was for him alone. "I have worn the treasures of my ancestors with pride. I believed that was what made me worthy. The glory of those who came before me." She reached up and touched the scales of her mantle. "This belonged to my grandmother's grandmother. She hunted the void serpent that gave these scales. She earned them, but I did not. I simply inherited them. I have never earned anything in my life. I was born into power, and I have held it, because no one was strong enough to take it from me." Her patterns shifted. Something new appeared in them, something that looked almost like respect. "You were born into nothing. Your species was born into nothing. And you have earned everything you have. Every battle, every scar, every crude weld on that armor." She paused. "I was wrong to mock you. I was wrong to mock humanity. And I am wrong to stand here in my inherited glory while you wear your own." She lowered her head. The High Matriarch of the Volanthi, ruler of 17 star systems, host of the 500th Anniversary Summit, bowed to the human in the broken armor. The hall let out its breath. Kale looked at her. He looked at all of them. Every powerful being who had bowed or saluted or simply acknowledged what humanity had done. He could have gloated. He could have made them feel small, the way they had tried to make him feel. He had that right. But Kale had not become what he was by being petty. He had become what he was by surviving, by enduring, by never forgetting what mattered. He reached out and gently touched Silva's shoulder. "Rise," he said. She looked up at him with surprise in her glowing eyes. "I did not come here for respect," Kale said. "I did not come here to make you bow. I came here to represent my people, to show them that humanity exists, that we are part of this galaxy, whether anyone likes it or not." He paused. "I have no anger toward you, Matriarch. You said what you believed. Now you believe something different. That is enough." He picked up his helmet and placed it under his arm. "Humanity thanks you for the invitation," he said. His voice was calm and steady. "We are honored to attend." He walked past her. He walked through the crowd of ancient powers who parted before him like water. He walked to the seat that had been assigned to him, a small chair in the back corner where the unimportant delegations were placed. He sat down. The hall was silent, except for the soft clank of his armor settling. Every eye was on him. The human in the broken armor, sitting in the worst seat in the room, looking completely at peace. Slowly, the summit continued. Beings began to talk again. Music started to play. The business of the galaxy resumed. But something had changed. Throughout the 3 days of the summit, beings found reasons to pass by Kale's corner. Important delegates made time to speak with him. Ancient powers asked questions about Earth and humanity and what they planned to do next. Trade agreements were discussed. Alliances were proposed. Doors that had been closed to humanity for 60 years began to crack open. On the last day, the Kovathi scholar came to sit beside him. "You have done more for your species in 3 days than most diplomats do in a lifetime," the old being said. "You came here in broken armor, and you leave with the respect of half the galaxy." Kale looked at him. "I did not do anything special. I just told the truth." The Kovathi smiled. It was a strange expression on his old face, but it was genuine. "That is exactly what made it special," he said. "In a room full of creatures wearing the achievements of their ancestors, you wore your own scars. In a galaxy where glory is inherited, you proved that it can be earned." He touched Kale's armored arm gently. "Never be ashamed of what you wear, Commander. That armor is worth more than everything else in this hall combined." Kale looked down at his scarred black steel. The dents, the burns, the crude welds. He thought about Europa and Kepler and the Crimson Rift. He thought about Torres and Rodriguez and Chun and all the others who had died so that he could be here. "I know," he said quietly. "I always knew." He stood, ready to leave. Ready to go home to Earth and report what he had learned. Ready to tell his people that there was hope. The Kovathi walked with him to the door.